Welcome back. In today's episode, we are going to talk about 7 very powerful speech opening lines and how you can make use of them in your speech. If you're somebody who stands in front of an audience very often, and if you're somebody who gives a presentation more often than not, then this video is going to be very, very useful for you. We are going to tell you why you need to keep these opening lines in mind and how useful these opening lines can be. If you're somebody who's presenting every now and then, if you're somebody who stands in front of the audience every now and then, whether it is presentation, whether it's giving a impromptu speech, whatever that you're talking about, if you're somebody who talks to an audience very often, then you are already thinking about how do you open your speech. Let's be very clear. Your opening sequence, your first 5 seconds is going to determine the rest of your speech, however important, however well you are going to speak for the rest of the speech. In movies, they understand this technique very, very clearly. In Bond movies, for example, most of the Hollywood action movies, you will see that the first opening sequence of the movie, it's a very, very power-packed action sequence that hooks the audience, gets them engaged, keeps them engaged. Once you're hooked, you stay hooked. And that is a very, very powerful, important message for all of us who stand in front of an audience and who deliver presentation after presentation. The lesson is clear, lesson is simple. You need to hook the audience in the first few seconds of your speech. It could be 5 seconds, it could be 6 seconds, it could be 10 seconds, but few seconds is all that you have to keep them hooked and engaged. So what is it that you can open with? What is it that you can start with so that they get hooked and they stay hooked? That's what we are going to see in our episode today. Let's jump into the first hook of the day. The first way that you can hook the audience is to use a very, very famous quote in your opening line. You may start, for example, Steve Jobs' quote saying that the only way to do a great job is to love what you do. When you state that, and when you state a quote from a great personality, and it's a well-known quote so that people can recall that, it gives a lot of weightage to your speech. People start looking forward to, okay, so what are you going to do about that? Why are you quoting that quote now? All of that expectation sets. And what it means is that people are hooked onto what you're going to do. But what you should do after that is very, very important. One, the quote obviously has to be tied back to your speech. If you're going to talk about how to take rest and how to sleep well, and if you use a quote, may not gel well. So you need to use your discretion to think about what kind of quotes would go well with the opening sequence for the rest of the sequence to go well, for the title of the topic that you are going to be speaking on, for the kind of schedule that you are on, for the kind of presentation that you're going to give to the people. So it all needs to tie up very well. So pick up the quote which is going very well with the topic of the day, the presentation that you are planning to give, and pick up something which is famous and pick up something which is reasonably well known. Otherwise, people may not be able to connect it back to what was saying. So that's tip for the day. Number 1, hook. Start with a great quote which sets up the stage for you. The number 2 way is to start with a great, shocking statistic. If you start with a statistic like, do you know that 80% of people fear public speaking a lot more than they fear death? Then people are hooked. Oh, is it so? Why? All of those questions start in their mind, which means they're going to be engaged, which means that they're going to be hooked for the rest of your speech.
In 2003, the UK government carried out a survey. And it was a survey that measured levels of numeracy in the population. And they were shocked to find out that for every 100 working-age adults in the country, 47 of them lacked level 1 numeracy skills.
But again, like the previous tip, you need to choose that statistic well, which ties in with what you're going to say. If the statistic is something that your speech is something else, then it's going to be complete mismatch and that's not going to go well. But a well-chosen statistic, even if it is not unknown, the more unknown is better for people because they're going to be shocked out of their sleep and they're going to sit up upright and they're going to watch the rest of what you are going to say. That is what exactly you want. So pick up something which is very interesting, pick up something which is going to be shocking, pick up something that people may not know and use that so that it ties up with the rest of your speech very well. Go ahead, choose a statistic and that is going to be our hook number 2. Hook number three is personal story. It works every single time. People are very, very eager to listen to stories. We are all people who love to hear stories and love to tell stories. So use that human tendency to work very well for you. You can, for example, if you start your story like I was 15 when I stood in front of my class, I was supposed to give a public speech. I was given a topic, and when I stood there, I completely forgot what I need to speak. And I was dumbfounded. I was looking at the audience. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. And that moment told me how well I need to prepare. That moment told me the importance of preparation, not only for speaking, but for everything else in life. And that failure, pain point of standing in front of the class, not knowing what to do, prepared me for the rest of my life. Now, when you use such real personal stories, then you can obviously, and you will obviously be speaking with a lot of emotion, a lot of pain, a lot of all of that learning that has come along with that story. And that is a great way to hook the audience, because people are going to relive that moment that you have lived long time back. They are going to live in terms of through your words, through your eyes, through your emotions, exact moments that you have lived through. And that would ensure that they are hooked for the rest of your speech. Obviously, like we have talked before, the story has to be in line with what you're going to talk the rest. If, for example, this example that I gave about the importance of preparation, if your speech is about how well you need to prepare for everything else in your life, then there's a great opening line, because it sets up the stage for the rest of the story to follow, rest of the speech to follow.
7 years ago, a student came to me and asked me to invest in his company. He said, I'm working with 3 friends, and we're going to try to disrupt an industry by selling stuff online. And I said, okay, you guys spent the whole summer on this, right? No, we all took internships, just in case it doesn't work out. All right, but you're going to go in full-time once you graduate. Not exactly. We've all lined up backup jobs. 6 months go by. It's the day before the company launches, and there is still not a functioning website. You guys realize the entire company is a website. That's literally all it is. So I obviously declined to invest. And they ended up naming the company Warby Parker. They sell glasses online. They were recently recognized as the world's most innovative company and valued at over $1 billion.
Again, whenever you use these hooks, it is very, very important that you choose it, whatever that particular hook, the particular style, with exactly what statistic, what opening line, what story that you are going to choose, or to be based on what is it that you're going to speak, obviously. But keep it in mind, when you use a personal story, it's a very, very powerful way of opening up people, making them listening to what you are going to say for the rest of that speech. Another great way to open your speech is asking a very thought-provoking question. When you ask a thought-provoking question, something like, what will you do if you knew that you can't fail? What would you do if money is not an issue? What would you do if you are given the liberty to fail? What would you do if... So when you ask something like this, then it provokes the audience. It makes them think, what would I do if I have unlimited money? What would I do if I have the freedom to fail? What would I do if I were to be young again? What would I do if I were old tomorrow? If I were to become 90 years old? All of that questions, very, very provocative questions, make them start thinking, and that exact cooking process ensures that they stay engaged with the rest of the speech. And that is exactly what you want to do.
How do you explain when things don't go as we assume? Or better, how do you explain when others are able to achieve things that seem to defy all of the assumptions?
The only caveat, as before, is that the question that you are asking should be so thought-provoking that it ties in with the rest of whatever you are going to speak. If you're going to talk about how to be fearless in terms of taking up and going through the steps of your life, then asking a question like, what would you do if you were given the freedom to fail? Ties in very nicely with the rest of the speech, because it sets up the stage for the rest of the speech to follow. So choose wisely in terms of what question that you want to ask. There are a number of thought-provoking questions. You may want to think deeply about it even before you start asking your audience about it. But asking a very, very thought-provoking question is a very great way of ensuring that your audience stays with you. The next way is to open your speech with a humorous joke. When you start with a joke, it eases all the tension. People start laughing, and people, when they laugh, they cast away their defenses. And now they are with you. When people laugh at your humor, at your joke, and when they start getting hooked, the rest of the speech becomes very, very easy.
I need to make a confession at the outset here. A little over 20 years ago, I did something that I regret, something that I'm not particularly proud of, something that in many ways I wish no one would ever know, but that here I feel kind of obliged to reveal. In the late 1980s, in a moment of youthful indiscretion, I went to law school. Now,
Again, you need to choose the joke very, very carefully, because not all jokes fly very well with all kinds of audience, all kinds of contexts, and so on and so forth. So you need to be very clear in terms of what you are joking about. It should not be insensitive. So take those sensitivities in mind. Joke and humor is not very easy to pull off. It is contextual, depends on the team that you're talking to, depends on the kind of crowd that you're talking to, depends on the culture that you're talking to, depends on the subject that you're talking to. So you need to carefully consider a lot of things. But when you consider and pull off a joke, nothing like humor to open your speech. The next one is what is called as a bold and provocative statement. Something like, let's say, failure is not only an option, but is a necessity. If you start with something like this, then people are going to sit up. People are going to look at, oh, what is this guy saying? How is he going to back it up? What is the logic? What is the story? They're going to think like that, and the thinking is going to make them hooked onto what you are going to say next, and therefore your speech.
The human voice. It's the instrument we all play. It's the most powerful sound in the world, probably. It's the only one that can start a war or say, I love you. And yet many people have the experience that when they speak, people don't listen to them.
But remember, when you make such statements, you obviously should have thought through. You should have thought in terms of cases, examples, illustrations, and why you are backing up those claims, whatever that provocative statement that you are making. But when you do that, it makes for a wonderful speech. The last one in terms of hooks that we're talking about is showing an image. It could be a video, it could be an image, it could be something, some prop that you want to show, so that people's attention are hooked towards that, and that becomes the basis with which you open your speech.
You and I are not very different from this flower.
For example, Steve Jobs' speech of launching MacBook Air is full of props, which showed how well he was prepared with the props, how well he was giving example after example of very, very relatable example of how thin their laptop is.
In the Mac world, there's clearly something in the air today. What is it? Well, as you know, Apple makes the best notebooks on the planet. The MacBook and the MacBook Pro. These are the standards in the industry by which competitive products are judged. Well, today, we're introducing a third kind of notebook. It's called the MacBook Air. This is it. Let me take it out here. This is the new MacBook Air, and you can get a feel for how thin it is.
Going to be. And that launched a whole revolution in terms of laptops. But the point that I'm making is that if you can use props very wisely, choose them, whether it is an image, whether it is a video, whether it is a thing that you want to show, it can go very well in terms of hooking the audience. Oh, what is it showing? What is it all about? All of that, start thinking. That means that they're with you. That means that they're hooked and engaged with you in terms of your speech. But don't overdo it. Don't show too many things. You need to strike a balance. You need to choose the thing that goes very well with the rest of your speech. All the caveats that we have been talking about apply here too. But when you choose well, when you choose the right object to show, right image to show, right video to portray, it all means that people are hooked and are interested in what is this person going to tell? Why is this person showing this? And they're hooked. So we talked about 7 different hooks. Use all of the 7, interestingly, in a way that fits your speech, fits the occasion, fits the audience, fits your topic, fits the subject, and open in an interesting manner so that people stay hooked and people stay engaged in what you're going to deliver. Wishing you all the very best. We will meet in our next episode.